నమస్కారం అండి. నా పేరు శైలేంద్ర. నేను మారిషస్ దేశంలో పుట్టి పెరిగాను. మా పూర్వీకులు దాదాపు 150 సంవత్సరాల క్రితం మారిషస్లో స్థిరపడ్డారు. ఈరోజు ఈ 13వ ఉస్మానియా సదస్సులో పాల్గొనడానికి నాకు అవకాశం దొరికింది. చాలా ఆనందం. ధన్యవాదములు. నేను ఇక్కడ పూర్వీకుల భాషగా బోధింపబడే తెలుగు గురించి మాట్లాడి భాషా రక్షణ కోసం విద్యకు ఉన్న యొక్క పాత్రను గురించి మాట్లాడుతాను. ప్రెజెంటేషన్ ఇంగ్లీష్లోనే చేస్తాను.
So the title of my presentation is The Role of Education in the Maintenance of Telugu as an Ancestral Language in Multilingual Mauritius. I will start by giving a brief history about the peopling of Mauritius, which has had an important impact in shaping the linguistic landscape of the country. So first, the Dutch settled in the island in 1638, followed by the French, then the British, until Mauritius got its independence in 1968. The Dutch brought few slaves, mainly from Africa. During French colonization, which lasted nearly about a century, the French brought slaves from Africa to work in sugarcane plantations. They also brought a few skilled, free and educated workers from South India. Then came the abolition of slavery in 1835, and the British faced a shortage of workers. The British, who also ruled in India at that time, decided to carry out the Great Experiment. They sent indentured laborers from India to their different colonies. In the case of Mauritius, the population of the island tripled with the arrival of the Indian immigrants. Mauritius became independent in 1968. Coming to the impact of people coming from different lands on language, it is to be noted that the Dutch had little linguistic impact as they had left. During slavery period, under the French rule, French was imposed. The African slaves tried to speak in French as they were forced to do so, and by trying to imitate the French, Creole language was born over time. During the British rule, the coming of Indians from different parts of India meant that several Indian languages were introduced. Along with the existing English, French, and Creole, Indian languages like Telugu, Tamil, Marathi, Gujarati, Odia, Hindi, Urdu, Bhojpuri, and many more were introduced. After independence, Mauritius had to cater for new language policies in order to maintain multilingualism. So, trying to maintain multilingualism in a new country was not an easy task. The government has to come with new policies, language policies, as there were people from 3 different continents speaking different languages. Each language that existed at that time was associated to ethnicity. So, having decided to adopt a multilingual approach, the country desired to maintain all existing languages. This was done also to avoid the same fate as the slaves who had lost their languages, and along with the languages, they had lost their identity. So as you can see, the demography of the country, people came from different parts, and there were minorities and majorities according to the number of people as well as the power they had. So the government decided to recognize all existing languages and cultures and to adopt a policy of maintenance so that all language can coexist. In the case of minorities like Telugu, Tamil, and Marathi, or even Chinese, these policies came as a boon as these languages were facing accommodation. So now coming to the Telugus in Mauritius, the Telugus were brought mainly from the port of Coringa and Madras, mainly from places like Vishakhapatnam, Rajahmundry, Kakinada, Bhadrachalam, and many others. They brought with them their religious practices like the Simhadri Apana Puja, the Rama Bhajanam, and also the Amur Pandaga. They were followers of Sri Vishnu, Lord Narasimha, Lord Rama, and Sri Venkateswara Swami. They also brought with them their dress code and food habits. With time, they started celebrating Ugadi, and also Andhra Day was later introduced, as well as Telangana Day and Tyagaraja Dinotsavam. Like every other communities, the Telugus work hard to preserve their identity and language. After working hours, they taught their children Telugu language as well as transmitted the Telugu culture. Unfortunately, it was a very difficult task being in a foreign land and among dominating cultures. So, with time, there was a shift in the language use among Telugus. However, the language being lost was a symbol of their ancestral roots being lost. The language itself was a symbol of community belongingness and a symbol of their hard work as well as the hard work of their parents or grandparents who had moved from a foreign land. So there was a fear of loss or void, as I said, a loss of identity. The same fate like the Africans had gone, it was a fear was there, and they didn't want that to happen. So culture politics has played a major role in the preservation of languages. As I said, the fears I mentioned above. So the fear was present throughout the Indian communities. That is, those people speaking Bhojpuri, Marathi, Tamil. Everyone had a fear of losing their language with time. So during pre-independence and independence time, having a majority of Indo-Mauritians in the country, so the government adopted favorable measures in order to empower those languages. So the teaching of Asian languages were introduced in schooling. It is also to be noted that Mauritius had strong emotional connections with India, and so geopolitics also played a major role. For example, there's a setting up of the Mahatma Gandhi Institute, which is a center for the teaching of Indian languages and culture. So this center was going to be and is still a game changer in the teaching of ancestral languages in Mauritius. It is good to point out here that there's similarity between Mauritius and South Africa in the case of indentured immigration. But in the case of South Africa, Indian languages were not introduced in the government curriculum. There it continued to be taught by the people of Indian origins, and there has been major language shift there compared to Mauritius. So now let's come to the phenomenon of ancestral language. Languages are taught as mother tongue, foreign languages, second languages, but in this case we are talking about ancestral language. So it can be said to be a new linguistic perspective to the existence of languages. So in most cases, languages are learned for cognitive or communicative purposes. In the case of AL, that is ancestral language, it can be noted that learners do not think in the language, and very less they talk in that language. So it cannot be qualified as a foreign language either, as the learners do not here in the case of ancestral language, they do show cultural and identity aspects. So let's see what existing research by linguists and sociolinguists have to say. Firstly, this field has been extensively researched as heritage language. UCL and Brooks qualify ancestral languages as languages that have been assimilated by modern languages in a particular context and have achieved the status of endangered or minority. Bhagwan portrays ancestral languages as immigrants' spoken language that have been forsaken because of existing dominant languages in the environment. Other linguists like Fishman, Campbell, and Valdez say that an ancestral language is one that has a heritage value as a speaking community, usually a minority one, tries to preserve it in a context dominated by other languages. In many multilingual contexts, an ancestral language is a language, usually a minority one, learned by its speakers at home, but never fully developed because of the existence of a dominant language. So, as I said, this phenomenon has also been researched as heritage language. So, a heritage language can be compared to a trait or an asset gained through birth, such as property or DNA. Brett Griffler goes further, stating that someone need not have the proficiency in the language to qualify as a heritage speaker. Cultural significance is associated and the label heritage is given to a language based on the social status of its speakers and not its linguistic properties. Van Dusen School characterized heritage language learners as a heterogeneous group ranging from fluent native speakers to non-speakers who may be generations removed but who may feel culturally connected to a language. Now let's see how all these languages have been introduced in the Mauritian curriculum. English and French are taught as compulsory subjects from grade 1 to grade 11. So these two languages are both used to communicate and to think. Then all students may choose a third language. So they are optional languages. They can choose one from Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Modern Chinese, Arabic, and recently Creole Mauritian has been added. So it's the mother tongue here. So the modern languages are taught for cognitive and communicative purposes, whereas ancestral languages mainly are taught for identity and sense of belongingness. The main functions of having ancestral languages in the curriculum are the preservation of the multilingual profile of the country, the preservation of cultural heritage bequeathed by the ancestors of each community, preservation of a sense of belongingness to an ancestral root. Ancestral languages also bridge the gap between the past and the future ties with India. It should be also pointed out that ancestral languages are taught as modern languages in the curriculum. So all language skills, that is grammar, vocabulary, sentence writing, essay writing, and literature, are taught at different levels to all students, and this is the case for Telugu also. What are the benefits of a language being taught in a curriculum? So here it can be noted that although ancestral languages are optional languages, they are examined and counted as core subjects in the curriculum. So previously when our parents or grandparents learned a language, they just learned it. They didn't get any certificates, nor they were recognized as useful. So this is a benefit of government policy of examining the language. Another benefit is that when the language is recognized and is taught in the curriculum, we get access to all facilities like other subjects. For example, in Mauritius, education is free, textbooks are free, examinations are free. So in this case, it can be noted that even those learning ancestral languages benefit from all these facilities. So the teachers are trained. In the past, our grandparents had to make an effort to teach the language after school hours. So now it is no longer the case. The subject or the language is available at school and is taught free of cost. We also have complementary schools which are now funded by the government. Previously, we used to have these schools that were voluntary and run by members of the community who had to invest their personal money to run these schools in order to teach the languages to the children. So now even the Ministry of Education caters for those schools as facilities are available. Once a language is recognized, there are also opportunities for higher studies and scholarships. Like we have the ICCR scholarships offered by the Government of India. So here it is a subject taught and it is examined till higher school certificate. Therefore, it is recognized as a subject and students excelling in those subjects, that is those Indian languages, get the opportunity to continue their further studies in India. Therefore, over time, Telugu, introduced as a taught subject at school, has had several outcomes. In the beginning, it has helped to reverse language loss. Experts were brought from Andhra Pradesh to train teachers here so that they could teach. With time, the country got a qualified pool of teachers who could teach and transmit the language. The new generation who learn the language can read and understand Telugu. Some people can speak it fluently, but it is done rarely only in social functions. And others who cannot speak fluently, at least they can understand the language. There are also professionals who can teach at upper levels and they can help in designing the curriculum as per our needs. Coming to the current status of Telugu language in Mauritius. So first, I start with the society. So it should be pointed out that the language is not spoken at home. It is used passively in cultural settings. By passively, I mean it is one-sided. So there's one person talking and the others listening. It is not a conversation. Again, it is used passively on all occasions and religious ceremonies like weddings, death ceremonies. So someone may take a speech and talk in Telugu and the others will listen. There's also one channel available on the national television. We also have radio programs. So there's very little involvement. So the radio jockey will talk and the audience may listen passively and there's very few participation. Now let's come to Telugu language in schools where it is taught as a subject. So as I said, Telugu is taught as a third language. It's a co-optional along with other languages like Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi and all. So the student has to choose. But here it can be noted, it should be pointed out that all these languages are available and anyone can choose any of these languages. But for most languages, it can be noted that the students choose a language from which their ancestors hail. So, for example, most of the learners of Telugu, their grandparents or forefathers come from the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, so they choose to learn the language. The language is spoken to some extent in the classroom as the student has to speak it when learning it. The teacher maintains a conversation in Telugu. So although they are not at ease, they try to speak it because it's in a classroom setting. The focus of teaching Telugu here, as it is in the curriculum. The focus is on examinations. Therefore, the students are better in written Telugu than spoken because they speak so many languages here. Uh, they simply learn it for exam purposes, so they are better at writing. The population of the country is approximately 1.2 million. So we have few students learning Telugu compared to others. And also, as I pointed out, the Telugu population is only about 3.5% here. So when we take grade 1 to grade 6, in each grade there are approximately 300 students learning Telugu across the country. We have around 100 schools. For grade 7 to 9, this is a secondary sector here. We have approximately 60 schools teaching Telugu. So the student population is 150 per grade. For SC, which is a school certificate equivalent to 10 in India. So we have approximately 75 students yearly. For higher school certificate, each year around 20 students write the exams. It is good to point out, as I mentioned, the HSC exams are Cambridge exams, so they are set by Cambridge. And yearly, we have approximately 5 students learning Telugu, be it at locally here in the University of Mauritius, or sometimes, as I said, we have ICCR scholarships, so students move to Hyderabad or Vizag. Apart from education, there have also been several ways through which Telugu language is encouraged. They are the media. There is a Telugu TV channel and movies as well as Telugu programs are broadcasted every day. Then we also have the National Drama Festival, which is an annual Natika Potillu organized in 10 languages. In Telugu, it exists since 1970. The government has also set up government institutions like the Telugu Speaking Union, that is the Telugu Bhasha Sangham, which is set up to help promote Telugu language. There is also the Mauritius Telugu Mahasabha, which exists since 1947. Such sociocultural bodies organize Telugu functions and festivals at national level. Through this presentation, I have been able to unpack the concept of ancestral language, which is contextual to the Mauritian context. Through the case of Telugu, I have further portrayed how people have a strong sense of belongingness and a will to preserve the language or whatever is associated to it, which is considered a heritage bequeathed by grandparents. The tongue, along with the others existing, being intangible heritage, are valued and promoted through status planning in the context, and therefore ancestral languages benefit from favorable educational language policies. Minority languages in the context here, like Telugu, which would have disappeared, have been revitalized and are taught at school despite having very few number of students. So with this, I will end my presentation. Dhanyavada Mandi. Namaskara Mandi.